No, no, it's 41. We got it. We didn't. There's nothing. Like they haven't. Boy, it was. It's usually so. Do some photo.
Get started. We're talking today about Codebase and culture and just specifically ways how you can change your working environment. Sometimes it's not ideal, sometimes it's not perfect. So you get some different options. One of them is to complain, maybe leave, or maybe you can do something about it. So this is a look at ways that perhaps you can do something about it. So the question, this is a good book for people just getting started. How many have read New Programmer Survival Manual? Got two. Okay, this is a really good book for when you're first getting started. Some of it is about how you can improve the place where you're working at, things you most need developer. Look for those of you just getting started with it, there. Some key takeaways coming out of it that I had were around the automation of Monday tasks. I talked a lot about like the scripting and like what are people doing by hand to improve upon. And then another way is just helping others and just like that connection with people and how can you find jobs that other people are doing and like, help them in some way. And it's like by helping other people, you're helping the company and it's kind of giving you credibility in that way. So kind of why would you want to do things like that? To improve efficiency of time, save money, save energy, and so kind of like that being better at work. So that could be an exciting book to read, and you kind of I read it sometime during around the time I was starting off with college, and I was excited about it, so going and make all these differences. But the reality is, it actually is kind of hard. I got in found out a couple of hours that it's really not really test at all. And some companies have tests, some don't. It's like very all over the place. I remember talking to different people in the company, and I found out one person they said they wrote unit tests, and I found out they don't even check them. And it's kind of like frustrating a bit, discouraging to get in, and there's just not really testing it. Source control is messy. It's just reality. It's a big company that's been around for a long time. It could be a big mess because the work's not clear. The flow of work comes when people have, what are you supposed to be doing? How are you supposed to be doing it? I just remember one time I had early on, I had a design document given to me, and I did it just the way I was supposed to do it. A new developer, and I sent it to QA, and they, oh, this is all wrong. What do you mean? I did what the document said. It turns out they had to interpret it, but it's like it wasn't a clarity. It wasn't team design. It was just a couple of people who decided what it was in the box. Then oftentimes you get the answer, we've always done it this way. I just, on my first few days when I was at my first job, I went and was being mentored by one of the developers there. And I was talking to him, why do we do this way? He just kind of laughs at me and it's almost like sarcastic laugh, not like action, like kind of gives this laugh. And he's like, this is just the way we've always done. And it's like that answer is silly, right? We shouldn't be doing it this way, but this is just the way that us as a company are doing this. So a little bit about me before we get into this further. I'm Stephen Orvis, and I live up in Butler County, north about an hour and 20 minutes from here. And I actually, with my wife, we have a grass-fed beef farm. I'm a software developer too, so I actually work for a farm fencing company. So right now, we live in that respect. I started out my development career as a younger child. I found a target gaming system that had cartridges and ticket cartridge out, and boom, it's a basic interpreter. So I library book and I started typing in programs. I didn't have persistent memory, so you unplug it, and it would be all done. That was fun. And I'm a dad of three boys. I've got a like sound, raised age ranges, and right now they think I'm perfect, and I know them to be. But I had a meeting they say how eventually discovered their parents didn't know anything. Well, that moment, we talking to my dad, I was asking him these questions about computers and how do you do this? How do you do that? He's like, look, you know more than me. And I was, oh, it's just that moment that we don't know everything. So fast forward to college, I had between when I was younger and I was really excited about software development. And then kind of getting to college, I kind of got a little discouraged on software development. And I was like, well, maybe I want to do something like maybe more IT, because I had done a lot of computer repair and things like that. Maybe I want to do something like that instead. I had my IT job too, and they just kind of put my mind in that area. At college, I had a teacher that worked actively as a professional software developer, and that really got me excited. And he introduced me to Codebase, Git, and Agile, and like my book show, which is that book, the New Programmers Survival, that book was from and so that was really monumental in my for just getting me excited in the software was so stemming from that, the idea of having different ways to do things, do better. So that kind of developed me with my career. I got my job and kind of just discouraging things. And so it's like, well, how do we change? How do we do better? And so that theme turned into the doing things to make life better for developers. So quick about culture, I'm not talking about food culture, talking about how we do a job, how we communicate. So could even be things simple as emails, messages. How do you communicate? How do you write the code? Save your code. How do you? What do you need? Because hinting at source control and should maybe be using source control and things like that. And then one need about Git. If you're actually using Git, you probably then even deeper than this. Once I had a manager who you're using all using Git, like 100 some, maybe 200 developers. The manager's like, should we back up our code base in case something happens to the server? We're like, everyone has a backup because it's good. So why would you want to change your culture where you work? Here's a fun story about Night Capital Group. This is a classic one use case for feature flags and how they can go wrong when you use them. So they did a business where it's automated trading for the stocks. So go ahead and make these trades, massive trades, and they're just earning a little bit on each individual one that's like grows automatically. So anyways, they decided to reuse an old feature flag. And the implication is in the story, I didn't verify, but I heard someone infer this that they couldn't turn the feature flag on and off without deploying, which feature flag should be able to turn on and off without deployment. The whole point of it. And they deployed code to one of 8 servers, and that ended up, and they put the feature flag on, that ended up on the old code to be running on some other servers, new server that was deployed to run the new code, and then that created a situation where it was trading way too much as soon as the market opened, and they saw a huge spike, and everyone was lost. What's going on? So the engineers rolled back the code, let the flag on, and so kept doing trading on this old code. And in 45 minutes, they managed to spend $460 million, and the company was broke. And that was like like they got bought out, like another company, like bought them and like paid the debt, and they're as a company that disturbed them. So one engineer deployed code, and some developer someplace wrote the code, and someone decided to reuse a feature flag. So a couple people made a decision destroy the company, but it wasn't really those people's fault. There's processes and changes how we're doing things. It didn't value them through the process. And if you want to dig into that story, there's a link in the slides at the end. I have it here. Maybe you can see my slides. I'll do that story. Fun story. So then real quick, about feature flags. We touched on that there. We talked about that they should be able to be turned on and off with lease. And then best practices, like we can make a feature flag, we need to have a merge request to take it out. That way you kind of have a documentation how to do that with other people if you're not going to take a flag back up. Maybe like for 6 months from now, that's then removing flags when they're no longer released is kind of commenting code. Your code has been commented for 10 years. If you uncomment it, is not going to work. And so you may as well delete commented code. And so it's the same way in this case, they had been doing a better job on not using the flag or even just removing the code of the old flag, they would avoid the situation. And there's a good article there from Martin Fowler's about feature flags. But anyways, this is kind of why changing the culture, bad stuff can happen. So something simple like pulling the code that's probably somewhat routine for those guys ended up wrecking the company before we got months. So like that attention to detail and solve problems that maybe have smells to them. People talk about smells because they process smell or something. So solve the process smells in the same. We talk about reducing human mistake. and other things that may happen as a result, like less time asking when things are build broken. Uh, the development machines, everyone may have a more unique process of how to build the code, and perhaps it's fragmented all over versus that data build and things like that. Less time around like the new person's machine being known. You can more systematize that process instead of having a one-off process. Document it, just hey, I'll sit with you and set your machine up. That's like a red flag. Versus that, oh hey, here's this script, run the script and here's that UL. One interesting thing I've seen that I want to play with somebody is I think it's super good things like Docker and other commands which development and Alvis. And I think that's a good way to make that more systematized. Or even I've seen Visual Studio Code with the web apps speaking of that. What's the problem with change? You come in, you've seen all these things that aren't ideal as a developer, and you want to change some stuff, but people are resistant to change, and so it's kind of a hard problem, so process. And kind of back to what we're doing now works. Sometimes in a business, change costs money, so that it's working, let's not change. So a big resistance people face as a new developer, how do we make that change? So back to talking about my first job that I had out of college, I came in and decided to look it, and I found out we were using Microsoft Team Foundation Server and Visual Source State, which yes, really old and really never. If you look at the experience. I'm just here. Oh, okay. I thought you were it's that bad experience. Anyways, so it had a conflict like you couldn't edit the same file without it being locked. And so like if you have 60 developers on the team and one person locks the file for editing, like no one else can edit the file in the meantime. So it's like really disruptive. I discovered the test-driven development, we talked about that, like people just weren't doing it. Like forget about like test-driven development, it's like unit tests, like people just weren't doing unit tests. They're just it's not there. We did Scrum, which was actually a meeting every morning and not actually Scrum, but it's a buzzword in companies like buzzwords. I started learning about Conway's Law and who professional leader that is. And kind of the takeaway there is build direct for innovation. Kind of every company, every job has things that aren't perfect and ideal. And so coming in as a person, you can see all the problems. Oh no, this is generating battery. Hey, there's an opportunity for me to do something and build it or would stand out as a developer and add value. So I mean, change world is perfect and it isn't. It's going to be perfect. You need to try. So kind of like that perseverance, like it's never going to be perfect, but incremental improvements just need to be focusing on that and trying to do that. All right. So this is back to the not having Git at my company. I was told by a manager once, he's like, we're in code freeze, you can't start coding this new feature because we're not good with this. And I had at the time, I actually did tech test. And I had spoken with my former teacher there, and I'm like, hey, we're using TFS and not Git. And it was like kind of really painful. And it's, oh yeah, we use this plugin called TFS. And then that sort of gets into it with TFS. So the lesson there was I had a problem. I didn't know I could solve the problem. I just knew I was in the situation and was really nothing to do. But then talking to my mentor, who's been along further than me, I was able to learn those. So that's something, these are connections, like what people know, what you need to know, or have done in that. And that's really what we learn and find on that. So kind of through that, I started using Git at work, and then I started proving it could work. And that example with the manager, I convinced my manager that I could go ahead and start coding on my part of the feature, despite the code base. And he's like, tell me more about this. I was like, okay, so I started coding and started doing it though, and I was able to get my coding people, other people, because I had organized and had differential blocks and files. Through that, I started getting fame with other people that Git was working. I started helping other people, teaching them about Git. I started working on another team where finally by then I had enough other people using Git that when the team was formed, we made the decision to go all Git. And that big step in our company because our company was TFS. We weren't using Git. And it just wasn't fair in the company. But by having these little silos of people, we built up a Git and then we were able to use it. And then later down the road, finally the company caught up with the rest of the world and said, but that's the changeover is hard to happen unless you have like silos of people that know that knowledge. So that's kind of teaching others. And I did that a lot for pair programming. I was just on the team, and you hit merge conflicts, whatever. And so I would be doing pair programming with people that they hit this problem. Hey, you're working through that. And then that was just a really great way to teach people and skill them up. And the thing I've learned with pair programming, even if you're with a junior college, right out of college, you're going to learn something. And so it's like a give and take from both of you. And it's a really valuable way to share with people. And especially when you're trying to teach specific skills to people in the organization or programming, you really good to show them like, hey, I'm doing it this way, and then teaching them that. And the tools that I've used in the past where I get branching to get into this the presentation here at the end. Learngatebranching.js.org. It has a neat flow of different scenarios that you might use for get branching, and you can develop one of those out. So if you want to work with branching or using the tool to teach others, and then back to the thing with code freeze again. We had an issue with the company where we have these different silos of branches, and if the branch was going to be released or something, they were trying to make it stable, so they put in a code freeze, but we didn't have to get it built, and we didn't have any sort of blocks, so you could actually just check in even though it was on freeze, and that was a big problem because when you get in trouble, it's so check the code by accident. But the way they communicated that the code was on freeze is they send out an email. The email might have come a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, and you have to you're sorting through your emails trying to find when was the last time this branch was on freeze or not on freeze, and it was really hard to keep track of because this is a super core communication. So it's frustrating for the managers because people are checking in when they shouldn't be. It's frustrating for the developers because we had this issue where we're getting in trouble for trying to do the right thing, but we found out that it wasn't the right thing. It's just confusing. So when we started to combat that, is we made these posters up for the different branches, and we hang up a poster every time we got an email. And pretty soon, we see people in the office walk by the queue to see the poster to see if the code freeze was on or not. Instead of checking email, because email was just hard to do. I discovered that poster, that sign, you have other signs of that in office. Will print out an email chain of what's this procedure? How do I do something? They print it out, put it on the wall, and being a wiki. At the same time, I started a wiki of the company, and because we just didn't have an internal knowledge storage, SharePoint documents all over the place. We had lots of emails that documented your knowledge, but of course, the new person doesn't have email chains from everyone else, and a lot of it's verbal. So we started a wiki, and one of the big ways to find information to put on a wiki that should be on a wiki is often as posters. So we took the signs, instead of hanging them up by the queue, we started a place in the wiki where we had a status page and then print codes frozen and not frozen. Hopefully today companies are more advanced and have data bills and things like that. So the exact situation that applied principle is there when you see documentation posted on a wall someplace, especially if it's changing documentation, it's a really good habit for a wiki, and that's an opportunity for you to jump in and try to help that. Another way I thought emails will people put information in email chains like here's a new procedure, and they send it out to everyone. Well, you just take that procedure, put it in the wiki page, put the link back in, we'll apply it all. Thanks, and put it in the wiki so we can find it. And it trains people as like, hey, it should have been the wiki in the first place. So it's a gentle way to push people. Put it in the wiki. Another way to train people to use a wiki is you get questions on IM. They send you a message like, hey, how do you use such and such? And if you start responding to some of those questions, here's a link to the wiki page of this. Eventually, in time, I saw this at my workplace. I would get people would message me. They'd be like, hey, I looked in the wiki. I couldn't find this. Is there a page about this? They weren't asking me, what is this? Instead, they're asking, where's the link wiki page? And so I trained them to go to the wiki first by responding to the wiki all the time. And you even get people, and you don't want to make people feel bad on purpose, right? But you would get people, you send them the link, and like, oh, yeah, I should have looked on the wiki. Like, you could, they felt a little bad about it, but hopefully it was a good bad that helped them to grow as a person. Remember, hey, you should be using the wiki. You don't have to message me with every question. If you're putting what you know on the wiki for everyone else to have, that we do a better way to communicate. Oh, and then another one is going deeper into wiki concepts. Something else you can do. You can automate integration with wiki pages. There's certain information that maybe is useful, and you could through code make it appear on the wiki. An example that I was just talking someone in my company, we have outages of the website that goes down, and everyone's like, hey, is it down, is it up? We do have tools that monitor that kind of status. Of like, hey, we can put it on a wiki page and just have like the log, kind of like how GitHub or GitLab, a big company like that has a nice status page with the log and history. We can automate that and we make that happen. Okay. So that's a quote. All your code should be unit tested. This is back to my first company. The manager's like talking to us all about some bugs or something that happened. He's like giving us a pep talk. What do we do? He said, "Oh, your code should be unit tested." I was like, "What?" And it's like, "We don't do unit testing." What are you talking about? I found a key like thought it was like major step or something. But unit testing can be very misunderstood, and it just isn't a culture that people will easily. If your company's not using testing, I found just you start checking in tests, like find a place to check them in, start checking them in. Don't be the person who doesn't check them in because that's not anyone. Eventually, you want them to be running with some build process. You should not at the level of the organization you can influence that, but try to get as far as you can. But ideally, they be running too, making a game build if possible. Thing about the test-driven development, developers are really good at writing tests that pass once they write the code because they wrote the code, and so they kind of know how it works. So that's the key with test-driven development. Since if you write what you need instead of write how the code works, you're really like the best. But the test-driven development is very hard at this scale. The more you do it, the better it is. And there's cool tools like if you start code how to test test-driven development, you come up with some good websites on that. And just the focus on writing your test instead of the focus on like solving the problem, just creating your brain. How do we think different? And again, pair programming is a great way to teach people. I did a lot of that with, especially the one team I mentioned. We just paired up, and the one person I worked with for a long time, he just didn't get the skill, and we kept working on it. And over time, I saw the skill, and it's just like that patience, and you just keep helping them. How do we write a test on them? Just guiding them through that process. So another thing I did was the team. We're actually pretty good agile on that specific team. We had a scrum master and a pretty nice team, one QA person, a couple developers, product owner. But we had a manager of the team, and one day he come and say, because he's been in our planning meetings, like, your story points are too high, which is kind of silly because the story point is relative and actual hours. But that goes to show that there's a misunderstanding of Agile often. And I talked about this when in Scrum meeting. Agile is one of the cool ones that companies like, and so they don't get that confusion for that. So you can try to change that culture by educating people and just trying to advocate for change. A good tool for education is the framework, but there's tons of other ones that you should just start Google as it is. And just like trying to implement those ideas in the team that you're on and sharing information with people. That's what I saw with the team I was on. We just kept reading articles and sharing them with each other and growing as a team as we were doing that. And you really can't just go it alone and know everything. You just have to bring the team up. And the way it looks a little different when I deal with a team, I do myself some things like the pizza size team, like the team's small enough that just one pizza would be, but reality is you probably don't control that as a developer how big your team is. So there's ideal things there, but not everything's really ideal. But it's like influencing the design and help people learn as much as possible, and that's what we can kind of move towards. So back to every team finds its own version of Agile. I've even called that the job where I'm at now. Like it kind of had the ideal Agile, and I'm trying to teach people, but I just found not everything fit, and really finding your own ones and iterative process. And the key is that iteration. Fun book, not all Agile, but it's the Phoenix Project. It's a really good book that talks a lot about DevOps and bigger company topics in that way too. And it's a really neat book because it's a novel. So it's a good read. It's not like a technical manual. Like you do this, you do this. Instead, it's like this fun novel. And this guy coming in this job and the problems he faces. Super good book. I'm not always a good book reader. The first time I read it, I read it pretty fast. It was interesting and educational. All right. So I put a command in there from uptime. Someone on the internet got 275 X, which is 8 years. So that server is probably a very special server for someone's. If it hasn't been rebooted that long, it probably has been customized to something very specific. So this is one of the things to watch out for. I talked about the smells in an organization. You have servers that are pets in the fact that care about the dice versus cattle. They're not pets, and that's spend time training them or like configuring them. So that's one of the things that is a smell. And then there's tools that you can use to mitigate things like that. Specifically, Docker is one of the big ones right now that it is a good way. And then getting deeper now, instead of even having a server, the functional programming. And then I'm seeing these new tools pop up, like Pipe3 or Windmill.dev, and then what's the other one? Zapper, that's the other big one. It's like another step in the functional programming that you can utilize the rest, not have servers. So then another misconception like Agile and the buzzwords that companies like to have is that monoliths or they're always bad, the cloud is always good. But I was part of a company that we managed to build a monolith in the cloud. This kind of seems not possible, but it was possible. And I attribute that to Codebase model, which is one of the things I learned about working at that first job. Somebody used me that concept. It's just that your structure of the code tends to mirror what's in the organization. And so how the organization is will mirror the structure. And so they organized the teams that built that monolith in the cloud. They just had a bunch of individual teams and we all worked on different services randomly. It wasn't the same service all the time, just random different services. And so we ended up with those random different code bases with random different teams to review them. But we ended up with having a shared database with all 60 microservices, which was kind of crazy. There's a lot of microservices, way more than we needed. And it wasn't broken out. It was broken out by entity, not by actual businesses. And it was just the wrong way to do it. But the team just knew how to build a monolith, so they just built what they knew how to build. It was trying to learn and that with that part. Some other smells there that you might get. The teams have to follow all the same tech stack. And this gets into the mantra. Typically, we would like a team to be the one to design it, to build it, to run it, to own it, and they take care of the whole life cycle of that service. But in this case, that wasn't at all. Someone else designed it. They're just told to make this tiny part of that service, and no one really was responsible for the services, and that showed. The services just were fragmented all over the place, and there were issues that would come up. No one really was a professional in that service. It was just everything all over the place. Another smell is shared frameworks. You can kind of see, especially business frameworks, they kind of pop up in that scenario where not only have the same tech stack exactly, we talk about we have the same framework, and then it's really just the microservices quickly became pointless. It's just like so then a good resource on microservices, if you're interested in the Showpack app, which I have a link to that website, they're notes too. And then there's some R frameworks, and that's it. R frameworks aren't released, they aren't good for some parts and practices like circuit breaker patterns or health checks. There's a lot of good pre-built stuff. You don't have to go use something like Spring Boot or Java or Steel Toe if you do .NET. Maybe I was struggling with this, but those kinds of frameworks are really look for microservices and just trying to do make a better service. So one of the things I found out working at the company is changing really slow. You see the idealistic where we want to be, and you try to bring people up, but it comes slow. Businesses change, costs money, and they don't want to be changed. Costs money, people are doing works. They don't want to take the time to breathe and fix things and do it the right way. And I even had a conversation with a gentleman over lunch there, and he was just frustrated how companies can't time to just do things the right way. But then from the company's perspective, they're trying to make money over here, so you still have a job. So there's this balance going on here than having a full picture of it. So often that doesn't quite change. So but people start blaming management. I saw that a lot. And people, oh, they don't win it. They won't win again or whatever the complaint was. That was a huge thing. They just be like kind of complaining. That doesn't really solve anything. And maybe it's not all the way management's fault too. Like it might be. And like I said, management can facilitate a change, but we have to be the ones to make the change and developers can change the culture. So it's like a two-sided direction. You can't really make management do something, but you can show them the value And really, as a business, it comes down to money. So if you're like, hey, if we do this, we're going to spend this much, but then we're going to get, this greater value and return at this time. So now you can quantify it and show them, hey, this is a good move, and then that helps them make a good decision. So that's often the way to change the management's minds. But yeah, back to the point of changing people's minds, that's difficult. People have been doing it this way, especially my company, it's been something like a decade before I got there, something like that. And we had old code. We just kind of were doing things the way we were doing things, and it was hard to make change. The baby steps to teach. So I some of the baby steps that to my company that I took was this is when LinkedIn Trail was a new feature. I had written some code using it, and the code reviewer was like, I don't know about that. No one's going to understand this. It was like the right thing to do. So they went to my manager, and then he's like, no one's going to understand this. But still, I wouldn't do it. They would agree with me, but finally they're like, hey, why don't we do a lunch and learn and teach people about it? I was like, okay. So then I got to check my code in, and I did a lunch and learn. So that was my start of speaking and why I started doing that is I wanted to train people. I realized that I couldn't do what I wanted to do technology wise unless everyone else was up to speed. So that's why that education became important because if I'm doing it and I understand it, no one else on my team understands it, and it's pointless because no, I'm the only person who can do it. So you need to really level everyone up with you. So kind of back to the complainer, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And so complaining doesn't really solve anything unless you try to find a solution and seeking that. All right, so here's another good book that I read recently. It's called The One Thing, and the quote from the book, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else easier or unnecessary? And that gets back to oftentimes we have all these tasks in front of me. There's something in that pile that's really going to make a big difference, and you got to find that one and one. That ties into my last rule, or my last slide about the 80-20 rule. And in the book, it kind of goes into this. So the 80-20 rule is basically that 80% of your results is coming from that 20% of the effort. So if you take that deeper, it's the 80% of the results from 20%. If you look at the 20%, again, like you have again another 20% inside of that made that 80% results. And you can do that like 3 or 4 times, and you're kind of like dig down, and you can find there's like that one core thing that was done that made a difference. And so sometimes looking at this idea of change, what is that 80-20 rule to get that change? Maybe it's not ideal, maybe it's not perfect. But you can dig down and try to find that little thing you can do to change and maybe has a big impact. All right, so there's my QR code that goes to the link tree, and then you can have a link to the presentation, my LinkedIn. And that is all I have, unless anyone has any questions. Any questions?